Hello, my friend. Today I bring you another lost legend from the depths of Middle-earth. Close your eyes, feel the magic surround you. Our journey begins.
There is a hill beyond the river's bend where no shadows fall. Even when the moon is full, even when the trees cast long silver fingers across the meadow, the slope remains untouched, as though the light remembers and chooses not to look. The villagers call it the Hollow Crown, though none remember why. It is not marked on their maps. It is not spoken of in song, but each spring, the same blue flowers bloom there, shaped like half-forgotten letters, soft as ash. No one plants them, and no one dares gather them. I passed that way once, long ago. The air near the hill smelled of stone soaked too long in water. I was young then, younger than I am now, though age does not matter much here. I had heard tales, but tales were all we had. And in those days, I still believe stories had endings. I remember the hush of the trees as I drew close, the way their branches lowered ever so slightly, as though listening, not warning, just listening. The wind had fallen quiet. Even the brook that curved nearby, known for its murmuring, held its voice close that morning. I recall stepping lightly, not because I feared, but because it felt wrong to be heard. The grass near the crown of the hill was different, thinner, yet not dead, pale, as though something had once touched it with gentleness and never quite let go. And at the center, where the flowers gathered thickest, was a stone, flat, worn, and curved like a cradle, turned to face the sky. There was writing once. You can tell by the shape of the lichen, how it curves in unnatural rhythms, how it avoids certain corners. I did not read it. The words had long since faded into silence, but I traced them with 2 fingers, and the stone beneath felt warmer than the air. And I remembered something I had never been told. 2 names, whispered not in voice, but in wind. Beren Lúthien, not as legend, not as myth, just as breath. 2 syllables carved into the hush. A love story, they said. But love is never what we think it is, and stories are not always kind. Some things live so long in song that they forget how to bleed. Others bleed so quietly that only the soil remembers. No one knows what happened on the hill, or rather, no one says. But each year, when the moon reaches its slowest arc, the old moon, the shy one, the moon that leans too close to the branches, a veil descends over that place. The air stills, the birds quiet, and from the river's edge, if you listen closely, you can hear the faintest sound. Not weeping, not music, just a rhythm, like footsteps that never quite fade. I asked my grandmother once, when she was still more woman than whisper. She said nothing for a long time. Then she placed her hand on mine and told me that some loves do not end. They wait. I did not understand then, but I remember her voice, the way it bent, the way it carried something older than fear. And I recall how she looked toward the hill, even when no one else did, and whispered the words again. Some loves wait longer than we are meant to live. It is said that Lúthien wore stars in her hair, that her song could soften stone and still the hearts of kings, that she danced once beneath moonlight for someone who did not belong in her world. But what they do not say, not in the songs, not in the stories carved into worn wood and whispered across hearts, is what happened after. After the music faded, after the moon changed shape, after the names became myth, no one speaks of the silence that followed. No one tells of the roots that grew too thick beneath the stone, or the way the wind began to turn back upon itself, as though afraid of forgetting. No one says how the river changed its course by a single breath each year, always drifting closer to the hill. And no one remembers who placed the stone, only that it remains. I visited again, once I had grown old enough to feel the weight of names. The path had narrowed by then, and the trees leaned closer, as if ashamed. The flowers were still there, blue as sorrow, soft as a breath never taken. The stone had not changed, but the air had. It pulsed, not with sound, but with memory. The kind you feel behind the eyes, the kind that fills your chest before it fills your mind. I knelt there, in the pale grass, and for a moment, I heard something. A voice, software, not speaking to me, not even speaking aloud, just being. And in that voice was the ache of someone who had waited too long in a world that forgets too quickly. The hill is still there, even now. The village pretends it is not. They teach the children to walk the long way round, to tie red thread around their fingers on nights when the moon turns inward. They sing songs, yes, but not the right ones, not the true ones. And still, the flowers bloom. Still, the grass bends. Still, the stone holds its silence. I do not visit anymore. My legs have grown slow, and my voice has too many echoes in it. But I remember. I remember the hush, the weight, the way the lichen curves like script written backward. I remember the warmth of the stone and the names that breathe themselves into the wind. Beren Lúthien. Not a story. Not anymore. Just the shape of a love that was never allowed to end. And now the hill watches. Not with eyes, with stillness, with patience, with the kind of sorrow that does not fade, only settles, like dust upon the shoulders of the moon. There is no grave, only a cradle. There is no music, only footsteps. And sometimes, when the wind forgets itself, you can still hear them walking side by side, beneath the trees that no longer bloom. There's a pond west of the hollow hill, wrapped in reeds that grow too tall and never rustle. The water does not ripple. It holds the sky like a bruise, deep and still and rimmed in silence. No fish swim there, no frogs sing. And yet, each morning, the surface is marked by a single ring, as though something has fallen in gently, without weight. The villagers call it the bride's eye, a name passed through crooked teeth and whispered beneath blankets on nights when the clouds press low. Children dare each other to walk its edge, to toss in stones, and count the seconds before the sound fades. No one stays long. The air tastes different there, sweeter but thick, like breath left too long in a closed room. I went once, just before the frost. The sky was pale, sun hidden behind a veil of cloud that never lifted. The path there was old, older than roads, older than names. Lichen softened its stones, and the moss pulled up like skin. Something had walked there many times. Whatever it was had never hurried. The pond was smaller than I expected, shallower too, though I could not see its bottom. It sat cradled in a ring of low stones, as if held in memory rather than ground. Across its surface, the branches of the nearby trees leaned close, their reflections bent in soft prayer. I stood at its edge and did not speak. The air felt thinner, as though words might break it. On the far side, someone had laid a thread. Just one, red, knotted at both ends, stretched across two stones, like a bridge for something smaller than sight. It swayed slightly, though no wind moved. I did not cross. I sat. The stillness there is not emptiness. It listens, and in listening, it remembers more than it should. There was once a girl in the village, long before my time, who sang when no one was listening. Her voice was soft and strange, like bells left to rust. She wore pale ribbons and never cast a shadow. Some said she was a ghost, others a promise. She vanished one winter night, and no one looked for her. But every spring since, the pond has smelled faintly of violets, and petals drift across its surface, though none grow nearby. The elders say that things do not vanish here. They return slightly different, slightly further away. Memory does not work the same in this place. It folds, it repeats, and sometimes it pretends. I have begun to dream differently since that visit, not of people, but of places. Long corridors made of water, doors hung from vines, walls that breathe with the sound of unseen trees. I walk through them slowly, and with each step, I forget something. Not with fear, but with peace. And always, at the end of the path, I find a stone. The same stone. Flat, warm, carved with the outline of a single hand. I place mine beside it, and feel nothing but silence. And that silence feels like being known. The boy who tends the hill has not spoken since midsummer. He walks the edge of the flowers each dusk, head tilted as if listening to a rhythm buried just beneath the soil. His cloak has faded to the color of old bark. His hair is wild with leaves. Sometimes he stops and places one hand on the earth, murmuring something not meant to be heard. When he looks up, his eyes hold the color of sky just before it storms. He went to the pond once, only once. He stood at its edge as I had, never crossing. His hands were empty, but when he turned to leave, the red thread was gone. And that night, the wind returned. Not loudly, not with force, just presence. It passed through the village like an old friend, brushing the lintels, lifting the corners of parchment, folding laundry that had long been still. It carried no leaves, no scent, only memory. And with it came the sound of laughter. Not from mouths, but from water, from beneath it. The laughter of someone remembered wrong. Elwyn now leaves her offerings in threes. 3 petals, 3 stones, 3 lengths of hair bound in twine. She places them at the base of the shrine on the hill, kneeling with her forehead pressed to the earth. Her lips do not move. Her hands tremble, but her shadow grows longer than her body. It stretches towards the pond, and sometimes the grass bends with it. I saw a light in the trees last night. Not fire, not star. A slow pulsing glow like breath made visible. It moved without pattern, weaving between the trunks as if dancing alone. I followed it as far as I dared, until the mist thickened and the path beneath my feet began to sink. The trees there grow in spirals. Their bark curls like names too often repeated. I turned back, but the glow stayed, watching. The moon has stopped rising on time. It lingers now, caught between sleep and sky, hesitant. When it does appear, it is thinner, sharper, like a blade or a question. Its light casts no shadows near the pond, only a shimmer, pale and wet, like tears that never reach the eye. The villagers have begun humming before bed. Not songs, not prayers, just a sound, low, sustained, carried through the halls like incense. It binds the walls, it smooths the floorboards, it keeps something at bay, or perhaps it invites something in more gently. I cannot tell. I no longer dream of doors, I dream of veils, of cloth stretched thin across water, held in place by pins shaped like teeth, of names whispered beneath moss, of voices carried on the backs of birds with no wings, and always the pond, still, waiting, like something that remembers what it meant to be loved and has grown patient in the silence that followed. Last night I placed a stone at its edge, flat, small, warm from my hand. I did not speak. I only listened. And in the listening, I felt her. The girl who sang, the boy who watched, the love that stayed. Not as ghosts, not as story, but as shape, as rhythm, as the quiet beneath the wind. I left before dawn. The red thread had returned. Only this time, it was tied around my wrist. The wind has changed direction again. It no longer comes from the sea, nor the mountain, but from somewhere beneath the roots, as if the breath of the earth has begun to stir in its sleep. The trees do not move with it. They lean quietly, as though bowing toward something deeper than soil. Even the birds do not rise at its passage. Their wings remain folded, and their eyes stay open long into the dark. I wake most mornings before the light, though light no longer behaves as it should. It arrives slowly now, folding across the land like worn fabric, hesitant to settle. There is a hush to it, not empty, not cold, just slow, like a secret finally nearing the surface. The pond remains unchanged, but the space around it has grown wider, not in distance, but in feeling. Paths once short now seem to stretch. Trees once near now fall out of reach. It takes longer to arrive, and longer still to leave, as if time thickens near the water, congealing into something with weight. And yet, when you speak near its edge, if you must, your voice sounds further away than your body. No one speaks there now. The red thread still appears, but not always across the stones. Sometimes it hangs from the reeds. Sometimes it rests on the surface of the water, forming shapes with its gentle curves. Once, I found it tied around the foot of a bird that did not fly away. Elwyn has started painting her hands, not with ink or pigment, but with clay pulled from beneath the shrine, pale gray, cool to the touch. She coats her fingers at dawn, then presses them gently against the eastern stones. Each mark is slightly different, a gesture perhaps, or a sentence unspoken. She does not clean them afterward. The clay falls away in time, like memory softening into soil. The boy no longer walks the flower line. Instead, he stands beneath the leaning birch at the edge of the hollow, head bowed, hands loose at his sides. His hair has grown long and tangled with bits of thread, red, black, one strand of silver. No one placed them there, or perhaps many did. The villagers do not speak of him. They walk wide circles around his shadow. He has not opened his eyes in days, but once I saw his breath misting in a pattern, slow, rhythmic, as though forming a word against the cold. A name maybe, a promise. It vanished before I could place it. The shrine has begun to tilt, only slightly, just enough that water now collects in its lowest corner, forming a dark pool where the moss grows thickest. Children toss in seeds and watch them sink. None float, none sprout. But one morning, a flower appeared on the surface, pale as milk, shaped like a thumbprint. It drifted without movement. No one touched it. It vanished with the dusk. The river path is disappearing. Each time I walk it, more of the stones are gone, not moved, not cracked, just absent. Their indentations left behind in the soft ground, like bones removed from a long-buried hand. I tried to count them once. I lost my place at 13. There are marks on my windows now. Not scratches, not carvings, just shapes where frost never settles. Spirals mostly. Sometimes a single vertical line, always placed at the center. They vanish by midday, only to return the next morning. I tried to trace one once. The glass pulsed beneath my fingertip, faint as heartbeat. The villagers have begun to braid grass to small crowns. they hang them from their doorways or leave them on stones near the pond. The grass dries quickly, but the shape holds. Even the birds do not touch them. One was placed on the boy's head as he slept. He did not stir. By morning, it had crumbled into powder, though the threads in his hair remained. There is a tree near the bend of the northern path that now weeps sap that glows faintly in moonlight. It smells of myrrh and wet parchment. Each drop falls with care, as if measuring its descent. The villagers have left bowls beneath it. They never fill, but they never empty either. The boy stood before the tree once, silent, his hand hovering near the bark. The wind curled around him, then vanished into the hollow. At night, I dream of linen, sheets stretched across water, figures moving behind them, shapes without detail. They reach sometimes, not toward me, but away, as though pulled back into something softer than sleep. I wake with the taste of lavender and salt on my tongue. No one has spoken the girl's name in many years, even in whisper, even in rhyme. It has slipped from the mouth of memory, yet I found it yesterday, carved faintly into the underside of the stone beside the pond. Not letters, not language, but the shape of her presence, the curve of her laugh, the breath of her silence. I did not touch it, but I knelt, and for a moment, the water darkened, as though someone had stepped into it from the other side. The moon has begun to stagger. It no longer follows its course. Some nights it rises early, some late, sometimes not at all. And when it does appear, it watches. That is the only word I have for it. The weight of gaze, the soft pressure on the skin. As though something older than night has turned its face towards the village and chosen not to blink. I leave the candle unlit now. Its flame flickers even without fire. A ghost of warmth, a memory of light. I watch it each night before sleep, tracing its slow curl as it folds back into the wick. There is comfort in its stillness, and sorrow too, the kind that knows your name without needing to speak it. The red thread appeared on my pillow this morning, tied in a single knot. It was damp, and when I held it to my chest, I heard, not a voice, but a sound. The hush of fabric across stone, the breath between footsteps, the beginning of something almost remembered, or the end of something that never truly left. The trees no longer sleep. They lean together now, their branches touching in hushes and half-curtains, forming quiet corridors where once there were paths. The wind does not pass between them. It pauses, it listens. And in that pause, something stirs. Not movement, not presence, only a shift in stillness, as though the air has begun to carry memory. I woke before the first frost to find my door ajar. There was no breeze, no disturbance, only the scent of myrtle and chalk, faint and unfamiliar. On the threshold, a small circle of thread had been placed, red as before, but braided now with a single strand of hair, pale, too fine to belong to any animal I know. I stepped around it, not out of fear, out of respect. Some boundaries are drawn, not to keep things in or out, but simply to be seen. The pond has changed. Its edge is lower, the stones at its mouth wet even before the rains come. Where the water once reflected the moon in whole, it now gives only the corner. A sliver of light, stretched long across the surface like a name misremembered. The blue flowers at its edge have begun to close before dusk, not after. Their petals no longer fold gently. They curl. Elwyn speaks less now. Her hands do the talking. They move in slow weavings as she gathers dried reeds and lays them across her table in a pattern none of us can follow. Sometimes she hums, not melody, not rhythm, only breath turned in circles. Last night, she pressed her palm to the stone behind her house and whispered a single word, again. I do not know if she meant it as question or prayer. The boy is no longer alone. There is another now, smaller, cloaked in fabric the color of coal damp ash, face obscured, steps soundless. No one saw them arrive, but they mirror him. Where he stands, they kneel. When he lowers his head, they raise theirs. When he hums, they remain still. They do not speak, but their silence carries shape, like the shadow of something not yet born. I saw them both at dusk, standing by the broken birch that leans toward the hollow. Their fingers almost touched. Almost. Between them hung a single strand of thread, suspended midair, unmoving. I watched from the tree line. The earth around them seemed to breathe, slow and shallow, like something buried not in soil, but in waiting. The shrine has begun to gather birds, not flocks, only one each morning. A single bird per day, resting upon the edge where the stone leans. Their feathers are dull, their eyes closed. They remain until the last bell of light, then vanish. No one sees them leave. The children leave breadcrumbs, but none are touched. And in the grass nearby, feathers pile, always three, always clean. I no longer sleep through the night. I rise at the hour between the fourth and fifth bell, when the fog is thickest and the dew settles on things not yet seen. The pond glows faintly in that hour, not with light, but with presence, like something long folded, beginning to unfold. On its surface, shapes appear, not reflections, not forms, more like questions given shape, then forgotten before they could be asked. One morning, I saw a figure. She stood upon the far edge of the pond, her back to the trees, hair falling in ribbons to her waist. Her arms were wrapped around herself, but not in cold, in remembering. She did not move. But when I blinked, she was gone, and the water bore her imprint, a ring of light expanding slowly, as if she had only just stepped away. Since then, I have walked more quietly. Even my breath feels heavier, like it does not wish to disturb the hush that has settled over the hollow. The villagers have noticed too. We speak softer. We move slower. Our shadows stretch further in the evening, and the sky, though clear, feels closer, like the ceiling of a house built to contain more than its rooms. The candles in my home burn longer now, even without wick. Their wax never melts, and their flames do not sway with air. I light them each night without flint. I touch their glow without burn. They do not warm the room, but they hold it together, like thread laced through cloth too old to bear weight. Sometimes, when I sit beside them, I hear a sound, not quite a voice, not quite a song, a pattern perhaps, a phrase carried backward. The pond gave something back this morning, a stone, placed carefully upon the edge where the red thread was last seen. It bore no mark, no shape, but its surface was wet, though the night had been dry. I picked it up and held it to my ear. I heard nothing, but my heartbeat stilled, and in that stillness, a single thought passed through me. Not yet. I placed the stone on my windowsill. It has not dried. The boy and the veiled figure have begun tracing shapes into the dirt with their feet. They do not look down, but the patterns form behind them. Spirals, broken loops, echoes of paths walked long ago. The shapes do not last, but the grass remembers. It bends differently now in those places. It cradles the air more softly, as though aware of something unseen. Elwyn left her house today with her hands bound in cloth. She did not speak. She walked to the willow near the stream and pressed her head against its trunk. When she stepped away, the bark bore an imprint of her hair, delicate, long, wind-stilled. By evening, the tree had bent slightly in her direction. That night, I dreamed of braids, long ropes of hair and thread, woven into rivers that ran upward. I followed them with my hands, climbing slowly toward a sky I could not see. At the top, a cradle rocked empty, not by wind, not by hand, by breath, and beside it, a name written in salt. When I woke, there was salt on my pillow, and my hands were damp. No one leaves the village now, not because we are afraid, because the roads have changed. What once curved past the fields now leads back toward the pond. What once turned to stone now turns to water. The paths shift gently, kindly, like a hand guiding a child home. Home, even if that word no longer means return. The trees whisper in languages none of us remember. Their leaves do not rustle. They murmur. They ask questions. They echo phrases never spoken aloud. And when the wind passes, it carries scent, not of bloom nor decay, but of pages turned in forgotten books, and of sleep, deep, ancient sleep. The boy stands now in the center of the field, the veiled one behind him, hands resting just above his shoulders. The light around them bends, not inward, not out, but sideways, like something folding into memory. And the red thread, it no longer appears, because now it's everywhere, laced through our hair, woven into our dreams, trailing behind our footsteps, as if we've been walking in a story that forgot how to end, or chose not to. Not yet. The air has begun to soften in strange places. Corners of rooms feel thinner, as if their edges no longer hold shape. The center of the village feels wider than before, though no stone has been moved. At dusk, when the last bell does not ring, the shadows settle slower, as though reluctant to lie down. Even the light, when it comes, feels folded, arriving already remembered, already dimmed. I stood at the threshold of my home this morning and watched the mist braid itself through the grass. It lingered longer near the stone paths, curling like ribbon through forgotten letters. I did not move. The earth beneath my feet had a hush to it, the kind carried by a place preparing to receive something old. The pond has grown quiet in a new way. Its surface no longer reflects the sky. Instead, it holds an image that does not change. A single tree, bare, crowned with thread, always the same. Even when the sky above is clear, or clouded, or holding the pale light of early frost, the pond remembers something else, something planted deeper. The blue flowers at its edge do not bloom anymore, but they do not wither. They wait. The boy does not wait. He walks again, not far. From the hollow tree to the foot of the shrine, then down the western slope to the edge of the field. His steps are measured, deliberate. His hands carry nothing now, not even the air. And yet the grass beneath his feet bows as he passes, bending and not rising again. The veiled figure follows him at a distance. Their cloak has grown longer, darker, like dusk woven into fabric. They do not speak, but sometimes their hands trace patterns in the air, circles, spirals, loops unbroken. The villagers pretend not to see. But each day, the windows open a little later. The doors close a little earlier. And always, the wind returns just before nightfall, carrying the scent of warm stone and old bark. There is a hush in the village now, gentle but certain. The kind of hush found in the space between held breath and spoken word. We speak less, we eat in silence. Our dreams come slower and linger longer. I no longer light the candle by my bed. It glows on its own now, soft and constant, like a watchful eye that does not blink. Yesterday, Elwyn placed her final mark, not in clay, not on stone, but on water. She walked to the pond with her hands cupped, and when she reached the edge, she knelt. I watched from the tree line. Her fingers dipped into the surface, and though the pond did not stir, a mark appeared, not where she touched, but in the very center. A spiral, formed not by ripples, but by absence. She left without turning back. That night, the wind came later than usual. It moved slower, and with it came a sound none of us had heard before. The whisper of fabric being folded over and over, as though the world itself was preparing to be wrapped. In the morning, there were linen bundles beneath each doorstep, tied with red thread, soft and damp. No one opened them. We simply gathered them, placed them in the hollow behind the old shrine, and left them there. The stone had grown warm again. I could feel it through my shoes. There's a tree near the edge of the field that has begun to bleed. Not sap, but something thinner, clear, cold, sweet-smelling. The animals drink from it in silence. And once, I saw the boy press his forehead against its bark. When he stepped away, the trunk bore the shape of a hand too small to be his. The veiled figure touched it once, and the bleeding stopped, not ceased, paused, like a word held on the tongue. The villagers leave gifts now at the base of the shrine: feathers, coins, curls of dried fruit, carved bones. None are taken, but each night the pile changes. Some items vanish, others are moved. And once, a spool of red thread appeared, half unraveled, its length trailing toward the pond. No one followed it. The light has begun to bend around the boy, not visibly, but if you stand near him, the edges of the world feel softer, like stepping into water, or forgetting something important just long enough for it to become peace. He does not speak, but once I heard him exhale, and in the space where breath left his body, the leaves around him shifted as if sighing in relief. The moon does not appear every night now. When it does, it is thinner than memory, a thread pulled too tight across the sky. It flickers once and then fades, leaving behind a glow that cannot be seen but is always felt. The pond brightens slightly in its absence, holding that unseen glow like a mirror to something older than light. Last night, I dreamed of the red thread. It lay across my chest like a river, and from it hung small weights, stones, feathers, words I could not pronounce. I followed it with my hand until I reached a knot. And when I untied it, the air changed. I was in the field again, but everything was reversed. The pond to the west, the shrine to the east, the trees bent forward instead of back, the wind moved up instead of across. And the boy stood at the center, wrapped in linen, his face peaceful, his chest still. And beside him, the veiled figure holding a bowl, not of water, not of fire, of silence. They held it out to me. I looked inside and saw nothing but reflection of my own face, but older, tired, software. When I woke, my hands smelled of myrtle again. The scent of the first morning, when I found the thread on my doorstep. The one I stepped around. The one that is now tied around every wrist in the village. Some knots are looser than others, but none have come undone. We do not ask who tied them. We do not ask what they mean. We only tighten them each morning in quiet. And in the hush that follows, we listen for the sound of folded fabric and wait. Because waiting now is all we have left that still belongs to us. The frost arrived without ceremony this year. It did not creep in from the mountain or spill downward from the sky. It came from below, rising through the stones of the hearth, blooming in soft halos around the roots of trees, spreading across windows from the inside. It made no sound, offered no chill, just a stillness so complete it seemed to carry the shape of sleep. We did not speak of it. We simply stepped softer. The air had begun to behave like cloth, catching on fingers, folding between words, drifting across the fields like someone walking just ahead. There were places now where breath hung longer, where footsteps echoed backward, where the fog moved in spirals even when the wind had stopped. The boy has not spoken, but his silence has taken on weight. Each day, he walks to the far edge of the field, where the trees meet the stone line that marks what the villagers once called the boundary. The word is no longer used. The land shifts too often, and boundaries imply return. He stands there, facing away from the village. The veiled figure waits a short distance behind, always in shadow, always with arms folded beneath the folds of their long mantle. Together, they form a shape, not of command, not of threat, a shape that seems to hold the rest of the world in quiet balance. We leave offerings now without knowing why. A cracked mirror, a braid of winter hair, a cup of water left to still beneath the shrine's arch. The shrine leans farther each day, yet never falls. Beneath it, the stone darkens, and the moss glows in the cold. The wind refuses to pass that way, turning instead along the old orchard path, where the trees bear no fruit, but still open their branches as if to cradle something small. The red thread has begun appearing in the sky. At first, only faintly. Single strokes among the clouds at dusk, then brighter. Now it stretches across the heavens like a pulled seam. It does not glow, it does not move. But each evening, it lies further across the stars, as if stitching them shut. The villagers call it the naming thread. We do not know who named it first, but we all speak of it now with a kind of reverence, the way one might speak of a door left open in the dark, or a book found already open to the right page. Elwyn has stopped coming to the center of the village. She tends only to the edges, where the houses are quietest, where the grass grows closest to the threshold. She carries bowls of milk and polished stones wrapped in cloth. No one sees her place them, but they are always gone by morning. Her voice has changed. No longer song, but whisper. Not speech, but threadbare memory. The kind that drifts from tongue to tongue until only the tone remains. She spoke to me once as she passed my window. Some children are born beneath soil. Some are born above the sky. I did not ask which kind we had become. The pond no longer holds water. It holds light instead, soft and unmoving, like the inside of a closed eye. When you stand near it, you see nothing but your outline. When you kneel beside it, your breath fogs in a shape that does not match your own. The blue flowers have folded entirely, now little more than husks. Yet they hum when the thread appears in the sky, and that hum travels. Through floorboards, through bone, through the roots of teeth. There are no birds now. None fly, none call, but feathers appear, pristine, silent, laid gently on windowsills, caught in strands of hair, left beneath pillows, always white, always warm. I found one on my tongue when I woke. I did not remove it. I closed my mouth, and it vanished. The boy has begun drawing, lines in the frost, patterns in ash, not spirals anymore, but longer shapes, ladders perhaps, or paths. Some fade quickly. Others remain long after wind or rain. One appeared in the snow behind the temple and did not melt. Even now it glows faintly at night, not from within, but from the memory of light once held there. The veiled figure speaks to him in gestures, hands opened and turned, fingers pressed together, palms placed on stone. The villagers do not watch directly, but we feel the change when they move. The earth hums in small places, the wells deepen, the candles burn to the wick and then begin again. No flame goes out, now unless asked. Last night, I dreamed of hands, not reaching, not holding, just resting. In the soil, on cloth, inside stone. Each hand carried a single ring of thread, tied once and sealed with wax. I could not tell if they waited for something or had already let go. Above them, the sky was not sky, but breath. It expanded and contracted slowly, with the sound of pages turning underwater. When I woke, the red thread was gone from my wrist. In its place, a small knot of hair, my own, bound with silver wire. I placed it in the hollow near the tree that bleeds. The tree was silent, but the blood beneath the bark brightened. It smelled of salt and seed and sleep. The child at the edge of the village speaks to no one. But each evening, she draws a circle in the frost on her window. Inside it, she places a small bone, never larger than a sparrow's. No one knows where she finds them. They vanish each morning. Her mother says nothing, only watches the sky with eyes too large for her face. The naming thread grows thicker. It pulses now, faintly, in time with something none of us can count. Time no longer measures itself in days or bells, only in breath, only in whether the pond glows or hums or remains still, only in whether the boy walks. Tonight, he walked all the way to the shrine. He stood beneath its leaning arch and lifted his hands, palms up, and for a moment it snowed. Not flakes, but petals, pale, weightless, scented like smoke left behind. They did not touch the ground. They vanished before they landed, and the red thread in the sky trembled just once, like a question waiting for the right breath to become an answer. We do not ask what comes next. We only tighten the thread that binds our wrists and breathe a little slower and wait. There is a field no longer named, not because it has been forgotten, but because the earth asked for its name back. And the villagers, in their quiet way, obeyed. It lies west of the hollow, where the shrine leans, beyond the last low wall that crumbles slower than stone should. The grass there is longer now, but thinner, like threads once woven too tightly and now pulled loose. In the center, where no seeds fall, something faintly breathes. Not air, not sound, but shape. An outline of absence that neither grows nor fades. Children no longer go there. Not because they are afraid. Fear is loud. The field is not. It is a place for pausing, for forgetting what one meant to do, for losing the name of someone you once knew only by the shape of their breath. Those who pass too close return slower, as though time held them differently for a while. They speak less, they listen more. The boy has begun to stand at its edge. He carries no staff, no symbol, only his stillness. Sometimes his gaze turns downward, not to the earth, but into it, as though it remembers something he does not. The veiled figure remains nearby, never touching, never turning away. When wind moves, it moves around them. When birds pass above, they veer slightly, wings stiffened as if in reverence. There are no footprints in the field, even when it snows. The snow, when it falls, does so only once the boy lowers his eyes. The flakes do not drift. They descend, soft, direct. No wind guides them. They do not land on branches or stones. only on the waterless pond, on the silent shrine, on the thread that still burns red across the sky. The villagers gather now only in threes, never twos, never alone. They carry candles that do not burn, only hum. Each is wrapped in cloth, scented faintly of myrrh and pine ash. They leave them on windowsills at dawn, and by dusk, the wax has softened into the shape of tongues, small, silent, waiting. No one speaks of the tongues. But the dreams have changed again. Last night, I walked through a place that once was mine, not in waking, not in childhood, but something older. A house built of bark and lichen, its roof stitched with fern roots, its hearth a circle of bones carved with forgotten letters. Someone was waiting there. Not the boy, not the veiled one. Someone wearing my face, older. They held their hand out, and when I reached, I touched not skin, but thread. Coarse, endless, pulled from the center of my own chest. They said nothing, but I woke with a red line across my palm and the taste of river silt in my mouth. Elwyn has begun to mark the doors. A single diagonal line drawn with chalk ground from the southern stones. No two lines lean the same, some point downward. Others curve gently, as though following breath. The doors with the most crooked lines creak more now, but only when no one listens. There is a pattern in the sound, a lullaby in reverse. The shrine has begun to tilt further, yet it does not fall. It leans now like someone listening from a great height, patient, burdened, but unwilling to break. Beneath it, the ground pulses gently, not trembling, not moving, but rising in breathless rhythm. The moss there has taken on the color of dusk. Each time I pass, I count fewer stones, yet the path never shortens. The boy has started humming, only once, just yesterday. A low note, so soft it did not travel through air, but memory. Those who heard it, or rather felt it, now carry a silence behind their eyes. Not sorrow, not peace, something deeper, as though their breath had touched an old oath and chosen not to speak of it. The veiled figure did not move when he hummed. Only the trees did, their branches lowered as if in mourning. The bark took on the shimmer of breath held too long. The roots exhaled dust, and beneath them small indentations appeared, not footprints, not holes, just impressions of knees in prayer. The thread in the sky now splits. Each night, a new branch forms, thinner, reaching, tremulous. It does not divide, but unfurls. And from each, a drip of light falls once and never again. They do not strike the earth. They vanish before they touch. But where they would have landed, the grass grows silver, the color of breath remembered through water. I visited the pond again. Its light is steadier now. Less reflection, more promise. The kind that asks nothing, only waits. I lowered my hand to it, and though I felt no water, my fingers came away damp. The scent clung to them, ash, salt, something like stone warmed by blood. There were no ripples, only a slow pulse beneath the surface. The villagers have begun to braid their hair again, not for ceremony, not for vanity, but as remembrance. Each braid begins at the nape of the neck, where names once rested, and in each, a single thread is woven, not read, not visible, but felt. When the wind moves, the braids sway backward, always backward, like they are being pulled by a voice no longer speaking. The fields hum at night, low, near the roots, a sound that does not disturb, but disorients. It makes the stars blur if you listen too long, and if you lie down in it, as one child did, you wake with soil beneath your eyelids and a single word shaped on your chest. It is not a word anyone recognizes, but we all understand it. It means something is returning. Or perhaps something has never left. I can no longer hear the bell, but I still know when it should ring. The time arrives like a thought forgotten mid-prayer, and in its place, a pressure settles, gentle, full of meaning, but without message. A pause between the breath and the word. That pause is longer now, and within it, the boy walks. He no longer begins at the tree. He starts from the center of the field, where no grass bends, and walks outward in a perfect spiral. His steps are not loud, but behind him, the thread begins to shimmer, not in the sky, but through soil. 1,000 fine filaments of red, glowing from beneath, pushing upward like memory. We do not follow. We simply watch, and hold still, and wait. There is a hush that settles before snowfall, but it is not silence. It is something deeper, older, like a breath held not by lungs, but by the land itself. A hush that folds over trees and stones, and the shoulders of those who remember too much. In the 8th winter of the red-threaded sky, that hush became a presence. It waited by the well each night, no shape, no light, only the certainty that something unseen stood beside the bucket and looked in, not to drink, but to listen. The villagers learned not to fetch water after sundown. The well did not dry, but the water had begun reflecting other skies. Skies no one had spoken of in generations. Skies where the moon had no face. The frost too had begun to change. It crept not outward from cold, but inward from memory. Patterns bloomed on panes and stone like maps to places unvisited, or sigils left behind by voices that forgot how to echo. On the lintel of the weaver's house, it spelled a name no one had spoken since before her birth. She does not leave her room now, but each morning, a length of cloth appears on her doorstep, hand-woven, but not by hands. Each thread is ash-gray and impossible to count. When touched, they hum softly, like breath moving through harp strings buried under earth. The shrine leans farther still. Its shadow now reaches the outermost wall of the village, even when no sun remains to cast it. Beneath the arch, the ground has darkened to near obsidian. It is not wet nor scorched, just dark, as though it has taken on the weight of all things unspoken. The boy stands there more often now. He does not kneel. He does not weep. He simply stands, one palm pressed to the stone, the other hanging open at his side. The veiled figure does not follow him there. Instead, it waits near the edge of the field, where the silver grass bends inward, as if bowing. The field has begun to listen. No one says this aloud, of course, but we feel it. The way one might feel the shape of music in their ribs before the first note begins. A tension in the roots, a pause in the birds that never quite return. A subtle change in how the wind chooses to move around certain names. Some villagers have started to speak only in gesture, not from fear, but respect, as if their voices no longer belong to them fully, as if each word costs something unseen. Elven, whose voice once rang clear across the stones, now carries a bundle of bells wrapped in faded cloth. She touches them gently before each step, and in return, her path remains untouched by frost. There is a window in the eldest house that never reflects anything. Not the sky, not firelight, not the face of those who pass, just shadow. As though the glass remembers a season the rest of the world has chosen to forget. A season when faces were not yet worn into skin, but traced in breath upon stone. Children no longer draw near it, but sometimes they sing very quietly when they walk past. The song has no words, just a sound like weaving, like the wind learning a new thread. The naming thread in the sky has grown dimmer, but not weaker. Now it hums only when no one listens. It has begun to split downward, not visibly, but in effect. Hair grows redder in the morning, even on those who were born fair. Scars shift slightly to align with the seam. Ink fades. Ash collects in folds of clothing never burned. At the pond, something breathes. Not with air, with presence. You feel it when you kneel. The way your shadow falls into the water, now before your body does. The way your reflection waits a moment too long to move. The way your fingertips return dry, even after they break the surface. Once, someone left a comb on the stone beside the pond. By dawn, it was wrapped in hair not their own, twice braided, once broken. The villagers gathered that evening, but did not speak. They brought threads from every house, white, silver, blood red, and tied them around the roots of the old tree that leans toward the pond. When the wind passed through the branches, it carried the scent of something not quite rot, not quite bloom, a smell like forgotten lullabies. The boy has begun to speak, though not in words. He marks the soil with bones now, not large, not human. Bird bones, fox, field mouse, each laid in a pattern that seems to suggest not meaning, but feeling, curves like sadness, lines like memory. The bones are never found afterward, but the feeling lingers, soft and metallic, like a song heard through snow. One morning, we found a ring of teeth around the oldest well. Not whole, not broken, just worn. Each one smoothed and strung on thread, the color of morning wood. No one touched them, but someone placed a bowl of milk at their center, and by nightfall, the milk had hardened into salt, salt that sang when the wind touched it. The veiled figure no longer walks. It drifts now, just slightly. No steps, no sway, just the suggestion of presence in motion. And when it passes beneath the bell tower, the bell moves, not in sound, but in grief. A low pull in the chest, a reminder of names we have not lost, only misplaced. There is a name no one can say anymore. It begins with silence and ends with dust. It once belonged to a road that led away from here, but the road has vanished, replaced by a thin line of lilies that only bloom at dusk. When picked, they do not die, but they lose all weight. They become as light as air and twice as quiet. Some carry them behind the ear now, not for beauty, for remembrance, as if wearing the flower means bearing the road. The boy has not aged, yet his shadow has grown taller. It now reaches beyond the shrine's stones, past the leaning tree, across the field's furthest edge. Where it falls, frost recedes. Grass curls inward, and somewhere deep beneath the soil, a single ancient drumbeat begins again. Not rhythm, not sound, but heartbeat. Once every breath, the naming thread pulses in answer, and in that pulse, we feel the memory of the first wound, not the one of blade or flame, but the wound of forgetting. The hollow left when something sacred was misplaced long enough to be mistaken for absence. We are not alone in that forgetting. We are held by it. Each evening, we light no lamps, we speak no names. We wait beside the pond where reflections no longer return, and we breathe as one, not in fear, but in recognition that something once buried is not rising. It is remembering, and soon it will speak. There's a kind of night that remembers more than the day ever could. It is not darker, only deeper, the way a voice lowers when it must speak of sacred things. Such nights have become more frequent now, not in number, but in weight. They settle upon the village like a shawl pulled over the shoulders of a body too tired to question its warmth. Beneath those nights, the boy walks in circles that never close. His path loops through the graveyard without markers, across the stones that once bore names, past the place where the hill sinks softly inward, as though something too heavy for memory lies beneath. He walks not with purpose, but with rhythm, each footstep placed like a syllable in a language no longer heard. The veiled figure does not follow him anymore. It waits by the mouth of the vanished well, where water no longer reflects and shadow no longer responds. The veil moves as if caught by wind, though none stirs. And beneath the hem of its garment, moss grows upward, not from soil, but from something else, something that hums without sound, a hymn for a god whose name remains uncarved. That moss has begun to spread. It creeps along stone, across walls, over thresholds never crossed. Houses long abandoned now breathe with a pale green breath, their interiors softening into forest. Birds no longer perch upon them. Insects do not sing. But in the silence, there's a sound. The sound of something soft returning where it was once refused. Elwyn says the moss speaks. She does not mean in words. She means in patterns. Curves that recall the lines of a mother's sigh. Spirals like breath turning inward. Small crescents that match the scars some of us carry, though we do not remember being wounded. She spends her days tracing them into cloth, with thread dyed in moon ash. At night, she leaves them beneath the leaning tree. The tree has split again, not broken, split, as if it remembered it had once been too. From the center now grows a thin shoot, pale as bone, with leaves shaped like the mouths of sleeping children. It leans not toward the sun, but toward the bell tower. Each evening, it trembles once, not in breeze, not in fear, in recognition. The bell still does not ring, but it turns now, gently, slowly, just enough to suggest that something inside it remembers motion. The villagers have stopped counting days. They mark time now in other ways. By the way the pond's surface shifts in tone, by the hour the shadow of the shrine brushes the fourth stone on the eastern path, by the sound of leaves falling from trees that should not yet be shedding. Their calendars have been replaced with gestures, a hand over the heart, fingers pressed to earth, a glance towards the thread in the sky. The naming thread is bleeding now, not blood, light. It drips slowly toward the horizon, forming beads along its length, like pearls strung on grief. Each drop falls without sound, and where it lands, soil hardens for a day. Nothing grows there, but nothing dies either. Those patches are warm to the touch and carry the scent of something long hidden inside iron. No one steps on them, not from superstition, but from instinct. One child placed a stone upon one of the drops. By morning, the stone had been replaced with a tooth. No one knew whose. The pond has begun to whisper, not aloud, in memory. Those who sit by its edge return home with dreams they do not remember, but their hands move differently for days. One woman sewed a blanket without needle or thread. Another carved a bowl from driftwood that had never touched water. A child drew a door no house had ever known, tall, arched, made entirely of breathing leaves. The door has since appeared, not in waking, but in dreams shared between villagers who do not speak of them aloud. It stands at the edge of a place they cannot name, not forest, not field. And it opens not with a key, but with a gesture. A finger pressed gently to the throat. The boy now carries something in his left hand. No one sees it. Yet all of us feel it. A pressure, soft but absolute, like the moment before snowfall or the breath drawn before an apology never spoken. He raises it only once each night. When he passes the fifth stone on the eastern path, the sky dims slightly when he does, as if remembering how to close its eyes. The veiled figure bows then, for the first time, not to the boy, to the silence following him. The shrine has begun to hum, very faintly. The sound is not heard by ears, but by walls. They bow slightly inward when the note emerges, as though leaning towards something holy. The birds do not sing during the hum, and when it ends, no one breathes for 3 heartbeats. The moss curls back slightly when it hums, as if listening, as if afraid. There is a book no one wrote, but we have begun to find its pages, scattered beneath beds, between stones, folded in sleeves not worn for decades. The pages contain no words, only impressions, pressed petals, water stains shaped like lost continents. The faint outline of faces we cannot recall. When placed side by side, the pages form a pattern, a spiral inward. The center is always missing. Elwyn has begun to fold the pages into birds. She places them on rooftops each morning. By dusk, they are gone. But in their place, white feathers remain, soft but sharp-edged, as if made from memory rather than marrow. One fell into the pond. It did not float. It sank, but the ripples moved outward in silence, even as they reached the shore. We all felt that silence. It was the sound of something being named again for the first time. The field beyond the village, the one that grows no crops, now sways even when the wind is still. The grass leans inward, not to bow, but to listen. In the center of the field, the soil has opened slightly, not dug, not torn, just opened, like a mouth preparing to speak. We do not approach it, but the boy walks the edge every evening, a perfect circle, always counterclockwise, each step a slow refusal of forgetting. He hums now, a tune with no center, no end, a lullaby for something not yet born, or something once buried alive beneath our breathing. The tune cannot be repeated. It belongs only to the air and the bones and the moment of dusk that no clock can name. The veil of the figure darkens as he hums, its shape less defined, more shadow than cloth. But beneath it, 2 lights have begun to glow, not eyes, stars perhaps, or reflections of stars long dead. They pulse not with life, but with recognition. They have seen this before. They have wept for it once. They will not weep again. The villagers gather now in complete silence. They sit around the shrine, not in prayer, but in stillness. Some hold candles that have never burned. Others hold stones warmed by breath. Children draw in the dirt with sticks that hum faintly. None speak, all wait. What they wait for cannot be named, but it is close now. So close, the soil beneath our homes dreams louder than our hearts. So close, the thread in the sky begins to unravel without falling. So close, even the bell dares a single note, soft, round, unfinished. We hear it not in our ears, but in our blood. And we know the sound. It is not warning, it is welcome. The morning arrived without light, not dark, but emptied, as if dawn had passed through unseen, leaving only its shape behind. The sky bore no sun, only a pale hue like pressed linen, stretched too thin over something vast. No shadows formed, only quiet, a quiet so deep it felt carved. The villagers did not speak of it. They stepped into the hush as into holy water, reverent, uncertain, unwilling to disturb. Doors opened slowly, footsteps softened. Even the grass seemed to hold its breath. the dew no longer glistening but matte, as if the world had agreed to dull itself in preparation. The pond had stilled completely, not frozen, not asleep, simply unwilling. No reflection came from its face, not sky, nor figure, nor child's hand. When one woman reached toward it, her fingers stopped a breath above the surface. Not from fear, but a knowing that to touch it now would mean remembering something not meant to return. A thread of moss had appeared across the village. It wound from the base of the bell tower to the edge of the old well, draping over stones and thresholds, skirting doorways like a procession without feet. It did not spread. It revealed. Beneath its path, the ground bore faint symbols, circles split in half, lines crossed once and never again, curves like sleeping eyes. No one claimed to understand them, but none dared to erase. Elwyn followed the moss for hours, hands clasped, mouth closed, bare feet, careful not to step too close. Behind her, the youngest children followed, each carrying a candle that never burned but never dimmed. Their light was not visible, but felt. A warmth behind the eyes, a tremble in the palm, a dream that wouldn't fade by morning. The tree had borne a single fruit. Small, dull grey, shaped not like an apple or a pear, but like a teardrop made of lichen. It hung low, just above the stone roots, swaying not with wind, but with breath, as though something within it exhaled slowly as it dreamed. No one touched it, no one spoke of it, but all knew it had not grown. It had returned. The boy no longer walked in circles. He stood still now, always in the same place, the center of the unmapped field, where the grass leaned inward, where the soil sometimes sighed. His eyes remained closed, his arms at his sides, palms open to sky. His hair had silvered at the tips, though no age had touched his face. Around him, the air felt thick with memory. Not air, perhaps, song, a song no one could hear unless they were willing to forget their own name. Some tried. One man sat beside him for 3 days, refusing water, refusing sleep. On the 4th day, he rose without help, his hair tangled with thread the color of ancient frost. He walked home slowly, eyes glazed with clarity. When asked his name, he pressed one finger to his lips, then to the ground. He has not spoken since. The veiled figure no longer stood. It had sunk slightly into the earth, its veil trailing outward like roots made of sorrow. Beneath the hem, the moss glowed faintly, pulsing to a rhythm not unlike a heartbeat, but not flesh, not blood. A beat tied to stone, to memory, to the soft grinding of time worn into ritual. Some say the veil weeps at dusk, not with water, but with dust, a fine silver powder that falls into bowls left by the children. They do not play anymore. They sit in doorways and hum, sometimes alone, sometimes in harmony. Their lullabies have no melody, only resonance, the kind of sound that turns breath into belonging. The naming thread in the sky has twisted into a spiral, still whole, still humming, but now turning slowly upon itself, like a promise reconsidered. At its center, something has begun to blink, not light, not star, not fire, a flicker of recognition. Each time it pulses, the earth below exhales, and somewhere in the forest, branches bend without wind. The forest has not been spoken of in days, not since the trees turned their trunks, not away, but inward, as if listening to something only their roots could hear. The houses lean slightly now, just enough to suggest they are no longer certain of their place. Chimneys tilt toward the pond, doors creak when left closed. Windows reflect faces not always present, and on certain walls, thin trails of salt have formed, even without sea or rain. One trail curved into a shape like an ear, another like a mouth half open. The salt is soft. When touched, it sings. Elwyn does not weave now. She gathers stones. Stones shaped like tongues, like teeth, like small birds turned to bone. She arranges them in spirals outside the shrine, never repeating a pattern. When she finishes, she places one black feather in the center. By morning, the feather has vanished, and in its place, a single note etched into the dirt. The notes cannot be read, but they can be heard, only when the bell turns. Only by those who have stopped calling themselves by their birth names. The bell has turned twice in one night. The second time we all woke, not from sleep, but from something softer, a trance made of listening. We opened our eyes to find our shadows standing, not apart from us, with us, taller, darker, rooted, as if finally deciding they would no longer follow. They now lead. At the edge of the village, a gate has formed, not made, formed. Vines braided with breath, bones wound into hinges, cloth embroidered with forgotten script. It does not open. It does not close. It simply waits. And in the space between its posts, a stillness hums so deeply that even time seems reluctant to pass through. The boy stands near it now, eyes closed, the veiled figure behind him. Neither move, but the air around them thickens with knowing, not prophecy, not fate, recognition, that this has all happened before, not in history, but in memory, not to people, but to places, and that the land remembers, even when we do not. The fruit from the tree fell at dusk. No sound, just a scent. It struck no stone. It left no bruise. It simply lay at the root, pulsing once with a light like breath. Elwyn approached. She knelt. She whispered something, not in language, but in rhythm. The fruit split, not broken, opened like eyes after a long sleep. Inside, a single seed, grey, shaped like the bell. She took it, planted it beside the shrine. And in that moment, all the candles flickered, not to life, but to memory. Every wick glowed once with blue light, then went out again. And the night deepened, not darker, but closer, as if drawing near, not to end, to begin remembering. The 11th dusk did not fall. It settled, like a shawl drawn over the shoulders of a name no longer spoken aloud. Like the hush in a story when breath catches and the fire forgets to flicker. Like the long exhale of something that has waited far too long to be wept for. The villagers no longer speak of day or night, only of the hush between the two. They call it the turning. No bell marked it, no bird called. Only the wind drawing in upon itself, not as a warning, but as remembrance. In that stillness, the boy knelt beside the seed. Planted the day before, it had already grown, not tall, but inward. Its stem did not rise, it deepened. Down, not up. A root made of remembering. The soil had softened around it, not loosened, softened, as though something beneath had exhaled and made room. Elwyn sat across from him, her hands full of stone feathers, each feather carved from slate, rimmed with thread from the naming thread in the sky. She laid them down in a ring around the seed's breadth. 12, each for a silence kept too long. The pond no longer mirrored, it cradled. What? None could say. But those who stood at its edge felt their lungs slow, their heartbeat deepen. A listening began inside their bodies, and with it, a forgetting. Not loss, unlearning. The shedding of names once wrapped in sound now turned to gesture. One woman dipped her hands into the water. When she pulled them out, her palms bore no lines, smooth as polished bone. She smiled once, then vanished into the trees. The trees had grown eyes, not to see, to weep. Knots in bark had softened, becoming sockets rimmed in salt. From them, thin threads of sap trailed downward, not sticky, but warm, as if the forest had decided to mourn aloud at last. None disturbed the weeping. Children placed stones at the roots. Men tied strands of their hair to low branches. Elwyn whispered lullabies in no known tongue beneath the crooked boughs. And still, the moss spread. It had begun to write, not words, patterns, curves that remembered limbs, spines that shaped maps, veined paths that moved like veins through a sleeping body. Across walls, down wells, up door frames, the moss bloomed in slow calligraphy. A scripture made from silence. The veiled figure stood at the gate. It had not moved, but the veil had grown longer. It dragged behind it now, over stone and root, trailing a hush that no foot dared break. The spiral in the sky turned more slowly. Each rotation brought a soft hum, one that pulled the breath from birds and quieted the insects beneath stone. The sound felt old, not ancient, older than age, the kind of sound that reminds the world it once was a secret. Beneath that sky, the village shifted, not outward, inward. Walls leaned closer, paths curved subtly toward the shrine. Houses seemed to breathe, inhaling memory, exhaling names. In one cottage, a cradle rocked without child or hand. In another, spoons arranged themselves into crescents. No one asked why. They simply bowed their heads. The seed, now unseen, pulsed. Each beat sent a breath through the soil. And from that breath, a scent rose. Not rot, not bloom. A memory. The scent of iron and cold bread, of sweat on a child's brow, of breath shared beneath a woven roof, of a language once carved into a ring, now buried beneath 6 winters. One by one, the villagers came to the shrine. None spoke. Each carried a thread of hair, of moss, of salt, of time. They wound them around the base of the stone bell, and for the first time it rang, not loud, not proud, but soft. A single note shaped like mourning. It did not echo. It stayed, held between ribs, nestled between the memory of a mother's hum and the echo of a forgotten lullaby. The boy opened his eyes. They had changed. No color, only light, soft, gray, like mist, remembering warmth. He did not speak. He did not move. He simply looked at the gate. The veil lifted slightly. Beneath it, not a face, not a void, not death, but grief. Grief made visible. A shape of absence, the curve where a name should be. The villagers did not recoil. They bowed, not to worship, to return something. From behind the trees, the woman with the smooth palms returned. Her eyes closed, but her hands hummed. She laid them on the earth. Where she touched, the soil cracked gently, and from it rose petals made of ash. Each petal bore a symbol, not drawn, but breathed. She wept, but her tears did not fall. They drifted upward, into the spiral, and the spiral shuddered. Once. And then a silence fell that no bell could ring through. A silence that felt like the moment before the world decides whether to speak again. The boy stood. Behind him, the seed exhaled one final time. From the cracked soil rose a tendril of smoke. It curved, it sang, it dissolved. The bell rang again, twice, then a third time, but softer, not diminishing, departing. The trees bowed. The pond rippled outward. The moss curled into spirals. The veil folded itself into the earth. And above all, the naming thread in the sky unspooled, not falling, but unfurling, like a sentence that had waited for the right breath to begin. We gathered at the field. We did not speak. We placed stones where the boy once stood. Each stone bore no mark, but each held a memory, a whisper, a warmth, a promise broken once and kept ever after. As night fell, no stars shone, only the spiral, turning softly, slowly, like the final page of a book no one remembers writing, or the sound a name makes when spoken for the very last time. There are places where the sky forgets to move, where the hush becomes heavier than wind, and names are no longer spoken, only held. Places where the stones have turned their backs, and the soil breathes, not for crops or roots, but for memory. Deep, slow memory, older than the blood that carries it. The village has emptied, not of bodies, of sound, of the motion that once echoed through wooden bowls and clinking wells and quiet fires. The kind of emptiness that comes not from loss, but from fulfillment. The terrible hush of something long prophesied, now complete. No doors are shut, no windows latched, but nothing stirs. The boy has not returned, but neither has he left. The field where he stood now pulses faintly in the dark, like a wound that learned to breathe. There are no flowers, no grass, only a soft layer of ash, warm, dry, almost fragrant. The scent of lullabies forgotten before they were ever sung. Some say they see him still, in the ashes curl, in the bend of mist at dusk, in the quiet reflection of water that no longer shows sky. He is not there, but the waiting is. Elwen no longer weaves. Her hands are still, folded in her lap, palms upturned like forgotten offering plates. She sits at the shrine where the seed was planted. Nothing has grown from it, and yet the air around it hums with the same breathless patience as a closed eye in dreamless sleep. The bell has rung once more, only once, and not from above, from below. A sound like memory turned inside out, echoing up through stone and bone, through soil and blood. Not loud, not soft. A sound that moved through marrow like winter. No one moved to it. They simply stopped and listened. And in that stillness, something was known. Not told, not taught, known. The moss has withered, but not died. Its patterns remain, etched in the memory of walls, in the spines of thresholds, in the backs of closed eyes. When the wind passes over, it sounds them out like song, but backwards, the way a child might hum to remember what they were never taught. The spiral in the sky has unraveled. Where it once turned, slow and certain, there is now a long, pale streak, like thread pulled from a ruined tapestry. It stretches from one edge of the heavens to the next, unmoving, as though drawn there by a hand too ancient to tremble. Some say it points, others say it warns, but the oldest among them, the ones who no longer speak, simply bow when they see it and close their eyes. The pond has drained, not dried, drained, as if the world beneath it opened its mouth and the water willingly stepped inside. What remains is not mud, but polished stone, smooth, glass-like, reflecting not the world, but the past. When one leans over its edge, they see not themselves, but a time that never belonged to them. Footsteps in snow never taken, prayers mouthed at windows they never stood behind, griefs worn like cloaks they were never handed. It does not frighten, it forgives. There is no more veil. The figure that once stood at the gate is gone, the gate too. But the space where it stood is not empty. It breathes. It bends light, hums in stillness, draws birds to flight and stones to silence. It is not portal, nor tomb, nor path. It is threshold, and every day the village grows slightly more inclined toward it. Not to cross, to remember. And the spiral, though faded, still marks the sky with its ghost. The people have begun to lose their names. Not forget them, lose them. Like stones return to riverbeds. They no longer greet one another with words. They touch hands to chests, to brows, to earth. The children speak in rhythm. The elders sing only through breath. Language has not died. It has returned to where it came from. They know now what the seed was, what the bell meant, what the ash remembers, not in facts, not in story, in silence. The truth, as it came, did not come with thunder, nor with revelation. It bloomed like lichen, slow, soft, sacred. They had never been alone. The field, the pond, the spiral, the moss, the boy, none were visitors. They were echoes. Echoes of a promise made too long ago to be kept properly. A vow, not by man or God, but by place, by time, by memory itself. Long before the houses were built, before the paths were laid, before the trees took root in weeping soil, this land had agreed to hold something. Not a secret, a sorrow, a grief too old to name, too large to bury. And so it grew into things, into stone and water and moss and veil, into child, into spiral, into hush. The people were not cursed. They were chosen. Not for punishment, for memory. They were to keep the forgetting safe, to live quietly around it, to care for it like one cares for a wound on an elder's hand, never healing it, only washing, wrapping, whispering to it kindly. And for generations they did, until the forgetting began to forget itself, until the bell rang, not from ritual, but from longing, until the moss began to write its own grief, until the boy walked in circles, and the veil opened, and the name, the true name, stirred beneath the stone. And now there is no more to hold. The seed has grown downward into the wound. The bell has rung from beneath the earth. The forgetting has remembered what it once was, not silence, but song. And that song, that long, slow, sacred song, has been sung. There will be no retelling, no teaching, no tale passed on, only the hush, only the ash, only the touch of hand to heart when the sky forgets to move. The people remain, but they are not the same. They are keepers of a hush that has spoken, carriers of a grief no longer hidden, living echoes of a sorrow now fully known. And the land, oh, the land, it breathes deeper now, not because it has healed, because it has been heard. At dusk, a light moves through the village, not lantern, not spirit, a thread, soft, silver, glowing faint as memory. It passes through doorways, over fields, across water that isn't there. It pauses at the shrine, where Elwyn sits still, her hands open, her eyes closed. It curls once around her, then drifts on, upward, not toward the stars, but toward the long unravel in the sky. And for a moment, just one, the spiral glows again, then fades, and nothing more is said, and nothing more is needed. And the wind, the soft, slow wind, returns at last,